There comes a time when kindness becomes a liability, when emotion turns into a leash that drags you through other people's chaos. And in that moment, you must decide, will you remain soft or will you become cold as fuck? You've been told your entire life to follow your heart, haven't you? To express your feelings, to let them out, to stay true to how you feel. But that advice, while poetic, has destroyed more men than it has ever saved. Because the moment you allow your emotions to lead, you surrender the throne of reason. And a man who is led by emotion is a man already conquered. The truth is far more brutal. Emotion was never meant to guide you. It was meant to serve you. The great rulers, the cunning strategists, the men who shaped history, they felt deeply, yes, but they never allowed those feelings to control their moves. They used emotion as a tool, not a leash. The difference between the powerful and the powerless lies right there. One reacts, the other calculates. Imagine a king on the battlefield. Arrows flying, men dying, chaos roaring all around. If that king allows fear or anger to cloud his judgment, the entire kingdom falls. But if he stands still, feeling every emotion yet acting on none, he becomes unstoppable. His mind becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. That's what being cold truly means. Not emotionless, but emotionally sovereign. When you become cold, you do not suppress emotion, you dominate it. You let anger sharpen your discipline, not break your control. You let pain deepen your understanding, not drain your will. You turn every feeling into fire that burns quietly inside you, unseen, unexposed, untouchable. Because the moment you show your emotions freely, you give people the blueprint to destroy you. Most people wear their feelings like glass. Transparent, fragile, easily shattered. You can see their insecurity in their tone, their desperation in their eyes, their weakness in their reaction. But the cold man, he is unreadable. You cannot tell if he's in pain, if he's angry, or if he's even interested. His silence becomes a language, his calm becomes intimidation, his stillness becomes control. That is the difference between the one who bends and the one who rules. Every argument, every betrayal, every manipulation, all of it feeds on emotion. People bait you to react. They provoke you not to win, but to see if they can make you lose your balance. And once you lose control, you've lost everything. The cold mind never gives that satisfaction. When the world screams at you, you speak softly. When they insult you, you smile. When they expect a reaction, you give them nothing. That nothing, that terrifying calm, is the most powerful move in the game of dominance. You see, emotion reveals your weaknesses faster than any confession ever could. A slight tremor in your voice shows fear. A quick reaction shows insecurity. A raised tone shows you've lost control. But when you master stillness, when you can feel every emotion yet remain unmoved, you become unreadable. And what can't be read can't be manipulated. A cold man studies his emotions the way a general studies the battlefield. He recognizes the storm rising within him, but chooses not to act until the timing is perfect. He knows when to show warmth to disarm others, and when to retreat into silence to regain power. He uses empathy when it serves his purpose and detachment when it protects his peace. That balance, that ruthless self-control, is what separates kings from beggars, leaders from followers, manipulators from the manipulated. Every emotion you feel has a purpose, but you must be the one deciding when and how to use it. Anger can be fuel, but only when directed toward achievement, not revenge. Fear can be wisdom when you listen to it, not when you obey it. Love can be powerful when expressed through strength, not dependency. Control does not mean suppression, it means ownership. It means your emotions no longer drag you. You drag them where you want them to go. Ask yourself this: how many times have you ruined something important because you reacted too quickly? How many times have you said too much, cared too soon, trusted too easily? Every loss you've suffered at the hands of others began the same way. You felt too much and thought too little. The cold man reverses that order. He feels deeply, but he thinks first. He moves not from impulse, but from precision. To become truly cold is to understand that emotion is the most powerful weapon in the world, but only in the hands of those who know how to wield it. When others rage, you observe. When others cry, you analyze. When others beg, you remain silent. You learn to let emotion exist within you without controlling your direction. That's when you stop being reactive and start being strategic. The warm man wants to be understood. The cold man wants to be effective. The warm man explains his feelings. The cold man channels them. The warm man reacts. The cold man responds. And when he responds, it's always deliberate, always timed, always devastating in precision. To master emotion is to master yourself. To master yourself is to master every situation you enter. Because once you no longer react to the world starts reacting to you. Every man is born craving approval. From the first moment you draw breath, you seek validation. From your parents, your friends, your lovers, your followers. You want to be seen, acknowledged, admired. But the truth is brutal. The more you crave validation, the easier you are to control. Approval is the invisible chain that keeps most people enslaved. They think they're living free, but every choice they make, the clothes they wear, the opinions they voice, the lives they chase, all of it is built around what others might think of them. The man who seeks validation becomes predictable. He will betray his own truth for applause. He will change his opinions to fit the room. He will silence himself to be accepted. That's why those who control validation, the ones who decide what is admired, what is desirable, what is worthy, control the masses. But a man who detaches from validation becomes dangerous. Because when you no longer need approval, the world loses its leverage over you. The cold man doesn't need the world to clap for him. He doesn't measure his worth by attention. His confidence is not rented from the opinions of others. It's built from self-recognition. When you no longer seek validation, you start seeing people differently. You realize most conversations aren't about truth, they're about positioning. Most compliments are not kindness, they're manipulation. Most criticism isn't honesty, it's control disguised as concern. The cold man doesn't bend for any of it. Validation is the modern man's addiction. Every post, every selfie, every story, every subtle flex, it's all a plea for approval. But approval is a drug that never lasts. You get one dose of attention, and before it fades, you already need another. That's how society keeps you weak, feeding you dopamine while stripping you of dominance. But the moment you stop caring, the system breaks. When likes, comments, and opinions no longer dictate your value, you become ungovernable. Detachment from validation doesn't mean arrogance. It means independence. It's the art of being complete without applause. It's walking into a room and not needing to be noticed. It's speaking truth even if no one agrees. The cold man's power comes from the silence of his confidence. He knows who he is without having to prove it. And that silence, that unshakable self-assurance, terrifies those who depend on the crowd to feel relevant. When you stop needing validation, something shifts inside you. You start speaking differently, slower, clearer, with conviction. You no longer rush to explain yourself. You don't chase replies. You don't defend your choices. Because when a man knows his direction, he doesn't seek permission to walk it. That's the essence of being cold. Not cruel, but immune. Immune to opinions, immune to praise, immune to pressure. People will test your detachment. They'll try to guilt you, question you, provoke you into defending yourself. Don't give them that satisfaction. The cold man doesn't explain. He decides. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you take your power back. Because every time you justify your choices, you hand someone else the authority to approve or reject them. But when you move in silence, people can't judge what they can't understand. Understand this: validation is not just emotional, it's strategic. Those who give it control those who crave it. The seducer gives you compliments to lower your guard. The manipulator gives you approval to keep you obedient. The system gives you rewards to keep you enslaved. Once you detach, their power evaporates. You become untouchable. You have to unlearn the need to be liked. You have to become comfortable being misunderstood, even hated. Because those who change the world are never loved while they're doing it. They're ridiculed, doubted, attacked, but they move forward regardless. Because they've detached from the need for validation. Their sense of purpose doesn't depend on applause. Their direction is internal, not external. When you stop chasing validation, you start chasing excellence. You start doing things not for recognition but for mastery. You work silently, build quietly, improve endlessly, not to be seen but to become undeniable. And when you become undeniable, validation follows naturally. The paradox is this: the moment you no longer seek it, you start to attract it effortlessly. Because people are drawn to those who don't need them. The cold man understands that approval is fleeting, but power is permanent. He doesn't chase the crowd, he builds his own standard. He doesn't care who supports him, because his identity isn't built on support. The crowd applauds you today and condemns you tomorrow. Their love is conditional, their loyalty temporary, their praise empty. But when you live detached from their noise, you gain a peace they'll never know. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start choosing what to care about. You choose your battles, your goals, your circle. You don't let others define what matters to you. You move with purpose, not performance. Every step you take becomes deliberate, silent, and powerful. Because once you detach from validation, your actions are no longer influenced by fear of judgment. They are guided by clarity of intent. That is when your presence changes. You stop trying to impress people and start commanding attention without effort. You stop talking to be heard and start speaking only when necessary. You no longer need to prove who you are. You simply are. And in that stillness, in that complete disinterest in approval, you find the essence of control. Indifference is not weakness. It is not carelessness. It is control in its purest, most terrifying form. The man who is indifferent cannot be ruled by the emotions or expectations of others. He becomes unpredictable, unreadable, and therefore unbreakable. Most people think power comes from aggression, from domination, from loudness, but the greatest power lies in silence, in stillness, in the refusal to react. Because reaction is surrender. The moment you react, you give power away. The moment you remain indifferent, you hold the world hostage with your calm. The truth is simple. People feed off your reactions. They test you, provoke you, and wait for your emotional response. Every time you respond with anger, frustration, or desperation, you reveal your weakness. You tell them exactly where to strike next. But when you remain indifferent, when you meet their manipulation with stillness, they crumble, because they realize their weapons no longer work on you. Indifference is psychological warfare, silent, invisible, and devastating. You see, when you stop reacting, people lose their sense of control over you. The manipulator cannot manipulate what does not move. The liar cannot confuse what does not care. The attention seeker cannot drain what does not engage. Indifference turns every provocation into a mirror, reflecting their weakness back at them. The more they try to pull you in, the more their desperation exposes them. That's the secret. The cold man never fights fire with fire. He lets the other person burn themselves out while he stands untouched. Most people confuse indifference with apathy, but they are not the same. Apathy is emptiness. Indifference is mastery. Apathy comes from not feeling anything. Indifference comes from feeling everything but choosing nothing. The indifferent man feels anger rise, but he does not speak. He feels insult sting, but he does not flinch. He feels betrayal burn, but he does not seek revenge. Because revenge is reaction and reaction is weakness. The cold man plays a longer game, one built on patience, strategy, and silence. When you master indifference, you begin to see how much of human behavior is just noise. People argue not for truth, but for attention. They attack not to destroy you, but to be noticed. They provoke not because they're strong, but because they're desperate to matter. Indifference is the one thing they can't handle. It starves them of energy. It denies them the validation they crave. It leaves them powerless. The cold man knows this, and he uses it ruthlessly. Think about it. When someone insults you, they expect you to defend yourself. When they disrespect you, they expect you to respond. When they ignore you, they expect you to chase. But when you do none of it, when you don't respond, don't explain, don't chase, they lose their power. They're left screaming into the void while you walk away unbothered. And that silence, that refusal to engage, becomes your dominance. Because silence speaks louder than any reaction ever could. Indifference is the highest form of emotional control. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it so completely that no one can trigger it without your permission. You decide when to care, when to act, when to feel. And when you decide not to, nothing can move you. That's the kind of power most people will never understand. The power to feel but not be owned by what you feel. When you master indifference, you stop chasing things that drain you. You stop arguing to prove your worth. You stop fighting battles that don't lead anywhere. You conserve your energy for what actually matters. And that is the foundation of strength, focus. The man who reacts to everything loses direction. The man who stays indifferent keeps control of the battlefield. Every argument avoided, every reaction withheld, every silence maintained, all of it adds up to dominance. The world expects you to be emotional. It expects you to respond to every opinion, every insult, every piece of drama thrown at you. The system is designed to keep you reactive, because a reactive man is predictable, and a predictable man is easy to manipulate. But an indifferent man is chaos disguised as calm. He doesn't fight on command. He doesn't take the bait. He doesn't play their game. And because he doesn't, he always wins. Indifference turns relationships into power dynamics you control. The person who cares less always holds the advantage. Not because they're heartless, but because they're not afraid to lose. Fear of loss makes people weak. The cold man has already accepted loss as part of life, and therefore, he cannot be threatened by it. When someone realizes they can't hurt you, can't trigger you, can't make you chase, they submit. Not because you demanded it, but because your indifference exposed their need for control. Every time you detach, every time you remain calm in the face of chaos, you build a reputation that silently commands respect. People might not understand you, but they will sense something about you. A kind of power that can't be faked. You become the person who doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, doesn't beg. You become the storm-still eye, the calm center around which everything else falls apart. And here's the paradox. The colder you become, the more warmth people seek from you. The less you care, the more they try to earn your attention. The more indifferent you are, the more powerful your presence becomes. Because true control isn't loud. It's silent. It's calm. It's indifferent. The man who can look at chaos and not blink, who can be surrounded by noise and remain unmoved, who can hear lies and stay silent, that man has already won. Desire is the oldest form of weakness. It has built empires, and it has destroyed them. Every man who has fallen, every king who has lost his throne, every leader who has been manipulated, all share the same flaw. They couldn't control their desires. Desire is not just lust or greed, it's the hunger for comfort, the craving for recognition, the need to be satisfied. It's the voice inside you that says, just this once, while it quietly erodes your strength. The cold man understands that desire is fire, useful when contained, fatal when uncontrolled. Discipline is what separates the ordinary from the powerful. Most people live as prisoners of impulse. They wake up when they feel like it, eat when they crave it, speak without thinking, and chase whatever gives them a momentary thrill. But discipline is the chain that binds chaos. It's the invisible structure that makes you untouchable. A man of discipline doesn't obey emotion, doesn't worship comfort, and doesn't need motivation. He acts according to principle, not pleasure. And that is what makes him dangerous in a world addicted to gratification. Every time you choose discipline over desire, you gain control. You take one step away from weakness and one step closer to mastery. But understand this, discipline is not glamorous. It's not loud or dramatic. It's silent, repetitive, and often thankless. It's waking up before sunrise when no one's watching. It's saying no when your body screams yes. It's walking away from temptation not because you don't want it, but because you've already conquered the need for it. The man who can deny himself is the man who cannot be denied by the world. Desire weakens your resolve because it blinds you with illusion. It convinces you that happiness lies in indulgence, when in truth, indulgence is the beginning of enslavement. The more you feed your desires, the hungrier they become. You think you own them, but soon they own you. The disciplined man starves his weakness. He controls his habits, his time, his focus, because he knows that freedom doesn't come from doing what you want. It comes from mastering what you want. When you live by discipline, you begin to see how chaotic the world really is. Everyone is chasing something: pleasure, validation, distraction. The streets, the screens, the noise, all of it is designed to keep you reactive, to keep you consuming, to keep you addicted. But when you choose structure, when you choose routine, when you choose to command yourself, you separate from the herd. You start walking alone. Yes, but that's where power grows, in the silence of solitude. Discipline gives you what desire never can: peace. The man ruled by desire lives in constant hunger. He's restless, anxious, unsatisfied. But the man of discipline lives with clarity. His focus is precise. His energy is channeled. He's not chasing 10 things, he's building one, and because of that, he wins. Not because he's lucky, not because he's talented, but because he's consistent. Desire burns out quickly. Discipline endures forever. When you replace desire with discipline, people begin to fear you. Not because you're violent or cruel, but because they realize you cannot be tempted. You don't fall for flattery. You don't lose yourself in pleasure. You don't get distracted by noise. They can't bribe you with comfort, can't seduce you with attention, can't lure you with shortcuts. You become an immovable force, someone who moves only when he decides to, not when the world commands it. And that's the secret. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. It's telling yourself that your future matters more than your feelings, that your purpose matters more than your pleasure. It's choosing long-term strength over short-term satisfaction. Every time you wake up early, train hard, work with focus, stay silent when provoked, you are building the kind of power that cannot be taken from you. You're proving to yourself that you are not a slave to impulse. You are its master. Most people quit not because they're incapable, but because they let desire dictate their path. They want results without sacrifice. They want recognition without work. They want comfort without commitment. But discipline asks for everything and gives back even more. The cold man understands this truth deeply. He knows that pain is not the enemy, it's the price. He embraces the repetition, the isolation, the restraint, because he sees what it's turning him into: something unshakable, something complete. Discipline doesn't require talent. It requires loyalty to yourself. It's not about perfection. It's about persistence. Even when you don't feel like it, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one else understands, you still move forward. You build your habits like armor, piece by piece, until nothing can pierce your will. And once your will becomes stronger than your desire, you rise above the crowd of the distracted and the undisciplined. The cold man doesn't chase excitement. He chases evolution. Every sacrifice he makes, every comfort he rejects, every temptation he resists adds to his power, because he knows the truth that most people never learn. Desire gives you pleasure, but discipline gives you control. And control is what every man truly seeks, even if he doesn't yet realize it. The greatest mistake a man can make is to see people as he wants them to be, instead of what they truly are. This mistake has destroyed kingdoms, ruined friendships, and broken empires. Because the moment you start imagining people's goodness instead of recognizing their reality, you hand them the power to deceive you. The truth is simple but cruel. People show you who they are every day, you just refuse to believe it. The world doesn't betray you, your illusions do. Every man, at some point, creates fantasy versions of others. You imagine loyalty where there is convenience. You imagine love where there is manipulation. You imagine respect where there is envy. You see potential instead of patterns. You mistake charm for character and sympathy for sincerity. But the cold man, he doesn't see what he hopes to see. He sees exactly what's in front of him. His eyes are unclouded by emotion, his mind unchained by fantasy. He studies behavior, not words. He observes action, not promises. And that clarity, that brutal realism, becomes his shield against betrayal. People will always reveal themselves in patterns, not moments. The problem is most men are addicted to hope. Hope that she'll change. Hope that he'll stay loyal. Hope that things will finally be different this time. But hope, when applied to people, blinds you. You cannot reason with reality if you keep painting it with fantasy. The cold man doesn't hope for change. He accepts what is. And in that acceptance, he finds freedom. When you see people as they are, you stop giving endless chances. You stop explaining their actions to yourself. You stop making excuses for behavior that disrespects you. The moment you stop romanticizing others, you begin to protect yourself. You stop chasing closure, stop waiting for apologies, stop expecting loyalty from those who only serve themselves. The cold man understands that loyalty, respect, and love are earned currencies, not universal traits. Most people act out of self-interest, and when their interest ends, so does their loyalty. Seeing people as they are doesn't make you cynical, it makes you wise. You stop getting shocked by betrayal because you anticipated it. You stop being heartbroken by lies because you recognized the liar. You stop feeling used because you saw the user long before they took advantage. That's not paranoia, that's awareness. And awareness is power. When you know what people are capable of, they can no longer surprise you. They can no longer manipulate you with kindness, or guilt, or tears. The cold man observes quietly. He listens more than he speaks. He studies reactions, consistency, tone, silence. He watches how people treat those who can't benefit them. He notices the small things, because those small things reveal the truth behind every mask. The man who flatters you too quickly will betray you just as fast. The one who gossips about others will gossip about you. The one who plays the victim today will become the villain tomorrow. The cold man connects the patterns and adjusts his distance accordingly. Illusion is comforting. That's why most people live inside it. It's easier to believe that everyone has good intentions than to accept that many people are driven by envy, greed, or fear. But comfort breeds weakness. When you refuse to see the darkness in others, you invite it into your life. When you learn to see it, to recognize it without emotion, you gain control. You don't need to hate people to understand them. You just need to see them clearly. Detachment from illusion is not cruelty. It's survival. You stop trying to fix people who enjoy being broken. You stop over-giving to those who only take. You stop expecting depth from the shallow. You learn to deal with people based on who they are, not who you think they could be. That's what Machiavellian wisdom teaches. Power comes from seeing the world as it truly is, not as you wish it to be. The world rewards clarity, not delusion. When you finally begin to see clearly, relationships change. You stop chasing emotional validation and start forming strategic alliances. You stop saying, "I thought they cared," and start asking, "What did they gain?" You start understanding that every human interaction has a purpose, some noble, some selfish. And when you can read that purpose without judgment, you can navigate any situation without being blindsided. Most people don't fail because of enemies. They fail because they trusted the wrong allies. They gave loyalty to the disloyal. They mistook flattery for friendship and pity for love. But the cold man knows better. He keeps his circle small, his emotions contained, his trust earned slowly and withdrawn quickly. He doesn't hate anyone, but he doesn't idealize anyone either, because idealization is a trap. It makes you blind to red flags and deaf to warnings. Seeing people as they are gives you peace. You stop expecting perfection. You stop demanding morality from the immoral. You stop wasting energy trying to decode mixed signals. You start living with observation, not assumption. You stop saying, "They wouldn't do that to me," because you understand that anyone can, if it benefits them enough. That's not bitterness. That's preparation. The cold man prepares for every possibility, so when deception comes, he doesn't break, he adjusts. Once you begin to see people clearly, you also begin to see yourself clearly. You realize how often your own ego blinded you, how often your own desires shaped your perception of others. You learn to check your biases, to question your instincts, to analyze your emotions before they distort your vision. You stop projecting your honesty onto others. You stop assuming they think like you, feel like you, or value like you. You learn to stand apart, not detached from people, but detached from illusions. Because when you see clearly, you stop bleeding for people who cut you with a smile. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes that not every battle deserves his energy, not every person deserves his emotion, and not every connection deserves his loyalty. That moment, when you step back, go silent and detach, is when your real power begins. The world has taught you to fight harder, to explain more, to prove your worth to those who never intended to understand you. But the wise man knows better. He learns the art of withdrawal, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Because every time you pull back your emotion, you gain control of your direction. Emotional withdrawal is not weakness. It is a recalibration of power. It's choosing not to participate in chaos that drains you. It's choosing to protect your mind when the world demands your reaction. When you withdraw emotionally, you stop giving others access to your peace. You stop being predictable. You stop feeding situations that thrive on your attention. You become a mystery, and mystery is dominance. People can't manipulate what they can't read. They can't control what they can't provoke. The truth is, most people don't want your understanding. They want your energy. They want your reaction, your time, your emotion, because every ounce of it gives them power over you. The more you invest emotionally, the more you become dependent on the outcome. But when you withdraw, when you remain still while everyone else panics, you become untouchable. You're no longer controlled by the moment. You control the moment. And that's where the cold man finds his advantage: in silence, in patience, in distance. Withdrawal doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring differently. You begin to care about peace more than approval, clarity more than connection, growth more than comfort. You stop arguing to be right and start observing to understand. You stop explaining your point because you know that explanation is wasted on those who don't listen to understand. When you withdraw, you reclaim your focus, and focus is the most lethal weapon in a distracted world. The warm man reacts to everything. He feels obligated to respond, to fix, to engage. But the cold man knows the value of restraint. He understands that silence is often the loudest response. That absence speaks louder than confrontation. That pulling away does more damage than shouting ever could. When you go silent, people begin to wonder. They replay every word, question every move, and realize they no longer have access to your energy. And that realization shakes them more than any emotional outburst could. Strategic withdrawal is the art of preserving your resources. You can't fight every war and expect to win. You can't give emotional energy to every situation and expect to stay powerful. The cold man doesn't drain himself chasing closure or forcing understanding. He walks away when something no longer aligns with his purpose. He doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't explain, because he knows that every step back he takes emotionally allows him to move forward strategically. Distance gives perspective. Silence gives information. Time reveals truth. The world rewards the man who can detach, because the detached man sees the battlefield clearly. He doesn't move based on impulse, he moves based on calculation. While others are reacting emotionally, he's observing. While others are fighting battles fueled by pride, he's positioning himself for advantage. Emotional withdrawal gives you vision. You start seeing patterns instead of pain, lessons instead of losses, where opportunities, where others only see conflict. To withdraw emotionally is to free yourself from the invisible strings that others pull. When you no longer respond to guilt, manipulation, or pressure, those tactics lose their grip. People will call you cold for protecting your peace. They'll call you distant because they can no longer control you. But what they call cold is really clarity. You're not running from emotion, you're mastering it. You've learned that emotional stability is not found in expressing everything you feel, but in choosing what deserves your feeling in the first place. Withdrawal is not always visible. Sometimes it's quiet, a slow internal decision to stop caring about things that don't move you forward. You don't announce it. You just stop engaging, stop explaining, stop reacting. You create distance, mentally before physically. And in that distance, you regain strength. You realize that the energy you once wasted on convincing people, fixing chaos, and defending yourself can now be invested in building something that matters. The cold man's withdrawal confuses people because they're used to reaction. They're used to control through emotion. When you take that away, they lose the script. They don't know how to play a game without your participation. That's when your silence becomes power. Because nothing disrupts manipulation like indifference. When you no longer fight to be understood, you start to understand everything. You begin to see that peace is not found in winning arguments. It's found in refusing to attend them. Strategic withdrawal also means mastering timing, knowing when to step back, when to disappear, when to stop engaging. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about choosing which battles are worth the cost. You learn to observe longer, speak less, and act only when necessary. Because every emotional reaction has a price, and the man who reacts least pays least. The cold man saves his energy for moments that matter, and that's why his moves always have impact. When you withdraw emotionally, you force others to face themselves. Your silence exposes their insecurity. Your absence reveals their dependence. Your calmness highlights their chaos. And that is the ultimate form of control, making others reveal themselves while you remain composed. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to stop playing the game they created. Because every time you withhold your emotion, you deny them power, and every time you deny them power, you move closer to freedom. There comes a time when you must stop being the emotional puppet of the world, when you must take the knife of control and cut the invisible strings that others use to move you. Emotional apathy is not about being heartless. It is about becoming unshakable. It is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of it. It's the art of watching chaos unfold without losing your calm, of standing in the fire and not letting it burn your soul. When you become emotionally apathetic, you no longer dance to the tune of praise or crumble under the weight of criticism. You stop living in reaction to others and start living in command of yourself. Apathy, in its purest form, is a shield. It protects you from the traps of emotional manipulation that society thrives on, because the world feeds on your feelings. It feeds on your outrage, your desire for validation, your need to be understood. It wants you to care too much about things that don't matter, so you stay distracted from the things that do. But when you embrace emotional apathy, you start starving that system. You no longer give your energy to drama. You no longer let others control your peace. You move like a shadow, silent, composed, unaffected, and that is when you become truly dangerous. The emotionally cold man is not numb, he is selective. He feels, but he does not display. He understands, but he does not react. His detachment is deliberate. It's a choice, a form of discipline that separates the rulers from the ruled. Because in every human interaction, emotion is leverage. Whoever controls it controls the direction. The man who loses himself in emotion loses his advantage. But the one who can look into the eyes of chaos and remain calm, that man owns the moment. When you stop being emotionally available to everyone, you stop being accessible to manipulation. People can no longer guilt you, provoke you, or shame you into submission. Their tactics lose power because you no longer feed them your response. Emotional apathy gives you the upper hand because it flips the balance of power. Now, they chase your reaction instead of controlling it. They speak louder, act bolder, and push harder, all because your silence unsettles them. That is the nature of power. When you stop giving emotion, you force others to confront their own weakness. The cold man's apathy is not built overnight. It is forged through experience, through betrayal, through disappointment. Every time you give too much and receive too little, every time you care deeply and end up bleeding for it, your armor hardens. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves access to your emotional world. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving empathy to those who see it as weakness. You stop fighting to prove your worth, because your worth is no longer up for debate. Emotional apathy becomes your quiet declaration of independence. The world will test this apathy. It will try to provoke you, to break you, to remind you of your old patterns. People will call you distant, heartless, arrogant, because they cannot control what they cannot reach. But that's the point. You are no longer reachable through the same doors. The cold man walks in silence while others scream for attention. He observes, calculates, and acts only when it serves a purpose. Every word is measured. Every move is deliberate. Every reaction is withheld unless it brings advantage. That is not cruelty, that is control. In emotional apathy, there is peace, a rare kind of peace that only comes when you stop seeking to change what cannot be changed. You stop trying to fix people. You stop trying to justify yourself. You stop hoping that someone will finally see your worth. You accept reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. And in that acceptance, you find liberation. You begin to walk lighter because you carry no emotional burden. You no longer need to be understood to feel validated. You no longer need to be loved to feel complete. You no longer need to react to feel alive. The cold man operates from logic, not impulse. He doesn't let emotions dictate his timing. He waits, he watches. He acts only when necessary. His detachment gives him the ability to see patterns others are too emotional to notice. He sees motives behind smiles, manipulation behind kindness, weakness behind anger. While others drown in emotional noise, he listens to silence, because silence tells the truth that emotion hides. His apathy gives him clarity, and clarity is power. To embrace emotional apathy is to understand that not everything deserves a reaction. You don't need to respond to every insult, engage with every opinion, or defend every decision. Most people are not seeking truth. They're seeking control. They want to pull you into emotional battles that distract you from your purpose. But you've outgrown that battlefield. You've chosen to protect your peace instead of your pride. You've learned that walking away is not weakness. It's warfare in silence. The emotionally apathetic man stands alone, but he stands tall. He doesn't depend on external validation to feel worthy. He doesn't rely on approval to feel successful. His power comes from within, from the calmness he's built through restraint. His silence intimidates. His indifference confuses. His lack of reaction forces others to question their own relevance. Because when you no longer react, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is the greatest weapon a man can possess. This is the paradox of emotional apathy. While others think you've lost feeling, you've actually gained control. You no longer let emotions rule you, you rule them. You can feel anger without acting on it. You can feel love without being blinded by it. You can feel pain without letting it consume you. You become the architect of your own emotional empire, one where calmness is the throne and logic is the crown. And once you reach that level, you stop chasing peace, because you are peace. You stop chasing validation, because you are validation. You stop reacting to the world, because now the world reacts to you. You have now seen what it means to become cold, not emotionless but invincible. To detach from the noise, to withdraw from chaos, to stand alone in your own silence and not be broken by it. This is not the death of emotion, it is the birth of mastery. The cold man is not cruel, he is precise. He does not hate, he observes. He does not chase, he attracts through stillness. His calmness is not weakness, it's control disguised as indifference.